In today's podcast, I'm more than happy to welcome a long-term friend and also the president of the Assembly of European Regions, Magnus Berntsson, who happens to be from Sweden. And Sweden plays a very special role in the world's management of this pandemic, since the Sweden means and measures that are taken in this pandemic are different to the means and measures which are taken in many other countries, in the vast majority of other countries on this planet. But let's figure it out bit by bit. Magnus, you're president of the Assembly of European Regions. You have been president of our Assembly of European Regions, where I have the privilege to represent my home state of Lower Austria. And I'm also happy that I have served as a vice president of the Assembly of European Regions for many years already. I appreciate our cooperation. So first of all, Magnus, what region in Sweden are you from? And what's not only in Sweden, let's talk about Sweden afterwards. What's generally the role of the regions, especially the role of the regions during this pandemic, in your opinion, as a representative of regions not only from EU, but of regions from all over Europe, from many different OECD countries. Magnus, it's great to have you in this podcast, and I look forward to our talk today.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you for welcoming me to the podcast, and thank you for all our friendship through the years. And I'll do my best to give my point of view from this situation. Of course, just to start to tell you where I am right now, I'm in my home region, Västra Götaland in Sweden. Gothenburg, where I live, is the major city on the west coast of Sweden. But right now I'm at the one of the house from the regional secretariat house, which is in Vänersborg, and that is 90 kilometers north from Gothenburg. So this morning I went first by tram and then by train over to Vänersborg. I guess that is somewhat unique in Europe right now, that you can go and work so far away from home. But on the other hand, both the tram and the train was rather empty, so you didn't sit especially close to anyone else. But if you wanted to start about the regions around Europe and how we are affected by the coronavirus, that's of course, everyone is affected in so many ways. And what can regions do? And that, of course, is also has to do with the different competences that regions have in their national sense. And coming from Sweden, it's the whole healthcare system is located on the regional level. So of course we are so much affected about the corona crisis, because we have all the hospitals and the management about the whole situation. And of course, even though the curve is rather flat still here in Sweden, would you
assume, or do Swedish regions assume that the health system, especially the hospitals, will be overwhelmed by this crisis?
Yeah, I think that will be the facts everywhere, and that will come also here. What we are trying to do is two things. The strategy is firstly to try to protect the risk group, the people over 70 and people with several diseases that will be the most affected. So of course we try to save them and make sure that they stay at home and don't have any contact with people that could give them the virus. And the other thing is to also of course, try to stop some of the social interaction, but in a way that would be able for a long term, because we don't think it will not end in 1 or 2 weeks. It will take a few months, and you need to have the population also manage this for a long term. So we think it's important that we try to get as much as possible to work in the same time.
So that's very interesting. Maybe we can step in here for a second, since obviously you have doubled the number of diseases from one day to the other. A few days ago, you have around the same number of diseases as Austria has, as a country with a similar number of inhabitants. But the Swedish government is not taking as many means and measures to confront this crisis and this pandemic on a national level. So in what way can the risk groups like the elderly or people with chronic diseases be protected if the rest of the society runs more or less like before?
First of all, I wouldn't agree that it runs like before, because people are asked to work from at home when it's possible, and when it comes to the size of the country, Sweden is, I mean, the same population as Austria, but the area is much bigger. So and we see that this also, of course, have an effect, and we see that there's a rather big focus on the corona in the Stockholm area, first of all, but also in the 2 other major cities. But it's definitely Stockholm that is sort of in the first wave, and that makes it possible. That's why we tried to not totally isolate them, but in measures that people accept for a long time, to people that you don't only need to have laws and regulation. You can talk to people and try to get them
regarding the personal responsibility, you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are responsible people, most of us, and we have loved ones that are in the risk groups, elderly or with disabilities. Of course, no one wants anyone that are close to us to be affected. But still,
but let me ask you that way. I know you as a very responsible person and a reliable person, and a person who is dedicated also to the overall wealth, and of course the health of the people of Sweden and all over the world. So I just want to make sure that everybody who listens to this podcast knows that you are a reasonable guy. Based on this, and having said this, my question is: are all the others who do different means and measures than Sweden wrong, in your opinion?
No, I don't think so. I think it has to do how we have been working with public health and things like that for a long time. I think that we have had a way of communicating with the population that has been working also before. It has been. I think if you look on other. Not to compare it completely, but let's talk about smoking, for example, which we know people that are smoking are affected much more with the corona virus, and we have been working for a long time to lower the amount of smokers in the country, and we have been very successful with that without very few
so you mean
laws.
Sweden is pretty much prepared, as far as I've heard. The government also claims to be always in close contact with experts on epidemics and pandemics. So these are good preconditions, and I don't doubt the fact that your preconditions in Sweden are better than in other parts of the world, or even.
but I must also say that no one knows. I mean, this is unique for everyone, so no one has the end result beforehand. So of course this is tricky and it's hard. But I can assure that both the governments, local and regional and national, and authorities also from that side, everyone want to do their best. But number one is to isolate the risk group. That's number one. We know that a lot of us, the rest of us, will be affected, and that is unfortunately that way, that we don't have any a vaccine yet, and we don't have any really good medicines yet. But we need to deal with the situation as it is, and of course, I mean, up to a few days ago, it was allowed for 500 people to meet up in the gathering here in Sweden, but it changed last week to 50, and I'm sure that will be also lower down when that day comes. That will be necessary.
In Germany, it's 2 at the moment.
Yeah.
So would you predict that there will be tougher means and measures in the days or weeks ahead in Sweden? Do you have a prediction on that?
I wouldn't be surprised if there will be other means that need to be taken, but they will come at the right time, because it is hard also for a normal person to be isolated in a very long time. It also affects the whole public health system, and we can already now see that people want to have more help for the mental issues already, and we're yet in the beginning of the corona.
Of course, I wish also the Swedish people best of luck during this pandemic, and especially, of course, you and your family. Maybe we can also talk a little on other regions of Europe, and especially the member regions of our Assembly of European Regions. Do you have any impression on different reactions on regional levels and different experiences on regional levels within the regions who are members of the Assembly of European Regions? We have regions among our members, not only in EU countries, but also, for example, in Turkey, in Ukraine, in Russia, in Albania, in Serbia. So do you have, let's say, some specific impressions on their view on the pandemic?
I would say it's clear that everyone is affected and how they, not only with the disease, but how they need to work right now as a regional politician or regional civil servants. Everyone's work is affected in one way or another, and you can see that all pan-European meetings are, at least until August, perhaps September, are closed down. And of course, in these weeks right now, it's rather hard to get in contact with the different regions, because everyone is sort of need to consolidate and see how they should be working in this field. But what we are doing from the Assembly of European Regions side is, of course, to try to do our part in helping, in showing the ways of how the EU structure is changing, and how we can help in finding ways of funding for taking care of this situation. We have been in meeting with the cabinet from the crisis. The Commission's work on crisis management, and we are trying to be facilitating everything.
Absolutely, that's also my experience in Lower Austria and all over Europe. That the Assembly of European Regions contributes a lot, actually, to crisis response by facilitating.
Yeah, absolutely, but it's right now. it's not the easiest time to focus on so much outward. People are rather inward looking right now, and that's natural. But there will be a day tomorrow or the day after tomorrow where we need to focus more on how we can take advantage of good results from other regions. And I'm sure that we can do good ways of showing these examples. And of course, now we need to do that in webinars and digital meetings instead. And I'm sure that we will have a lot more skills in this field. I would say I can see that already in my regions. We are rather good in having digital meetings today.
Absolutely. That is also a huge step forward, I guess, which will remain after the pandemic.
Yeah.
That we work even closer together than before, but in digital ways. And in more cases than before from our home offices. And this is one of the issues where also the public bodies have to take care that rules and procedures are fine with that. So we don't need hurdles or any obstacles for home office work or teleworking or digitalization. And we know that regions contribute a lot to that issue since they very often take care of infrastructure, and the digital infrastructure is very important. For example, I'm pretty much involved with the South Korean response to the pandemic as the head of the Korea delegation of the European Parliament. And they say, among other things, one of the reasons why their response was very good, maybe the best in the world so far, is that they have rolled out the 5G network. So they are pretty fast in digitalization, and they have rolled out this 5G network only half a year ago. But it meant a lot to the technological response via big data, via anonymous data of citizens and their risk to be infected by the virus. So things belong together, crisis response as well as daily work. And I can imagine that this can also mean a huge step forward for Europe. Well, the Assembly of European Regions connects many different regions. And my view is also that in times of crisis, when everybody talks about only one single issue, which is the case not only domestically or in Europe, but globally at the moment, we should not lose the view and out of our sight the other issues, which are also important and which will also be on our agenda during the crisis and especially after the crisis. So would you share the most important issues the Assembly of European Regions will take care of in the month or even years ahead, besides the crisis, beside the pandemic?
No, absolutely. You're definitely right, Lucas. And of course, we were in the transition period in both Europe and in the world when it comes to the climate matters and how to create a good society for the next generations, but also doing it in a way that we still can live in a welfare society and not to hide in a cave or something like that, but how to develop into follow the UN's sustainability goals, but in a way where we both have can increase their welfare and the possibility to get good jobs. And this transition is definitely going on at the same time as this crisis. And I'm sure that in some of the sectors we will see rather big jumps in this sense during this time, and this is something that is important for us also to work with among different regions. But I would say one of the major areas where we work is definitely the SDGs and how we as a regions can use them as a
guideline, I would say.
Guideline and learn from each other, because I think it has come from being something we heard about to something very concrete in our daily budgets today.
And we are all requested to do something concrete on the basis of this sustainable development goals.
Yeah. So this is a huge field for us, and will continue. Another field is, of course, to influence also your job and in the European structure in a way where we can show that the regions are definitely a factor that can play a lot of instruments in the different also in other developing areas. And it is important now with the new both Commission, Parliament, and the Council that we manage to have a good dialogue to develop. And of course, we have been talking with so many people about the European budgets, the MFF, and even though we have a new situation right now, it's still important because we need these tools to develop, and also that we have a lot of knowledge on the regional ground that we share between each other, but it also need to be followed with both the structure and funding that can help us to develop a better life for ourselves and for coming generations.
Absolutely. So I'm more than happy that I can be part of the Assembly of European Regions and also remain an advocate in European Parliament for the regions and for the regional level, which contributes a lot to life quality, as we all know, to infrastructure. We'll never forget situations when we had meetings in our circle of the Assembly of European Regions during times of crisis, for example, between Russia and Ukraine.
Absolutely.
Still times of crisis there, but it was the peak. But on the regional level, to talk to each other was still possible that time. And regions talk to each other rather more than states if they are in times of crisis. But everybody on the local and the regional level knows very well that life quality is based on infrastructure, opportunities for education for children, and also for academia, and good job opportunities and everything that's locally and regionally important. And that's why I guess our work in the Assembly of European Regions, and that's also the way I experience your work, Magnus, is pretty close to what people really need. And it's pretty far from ideologies and of course extremely far from nationalism or populism or anything alike. It's close to practical politics. I guess you agree, and I want you to have the final word in today's podcast since you're the guest, and I appreciate very much to have you.
No, but thank you. I totally agree. I mean that's one of the reasons why I love to work in regional politics, because we are put in a situation where we need to put our citizens' needs at first hand. Of course, everyone thinks they do that, but if you work regional or locally, you meet your neighbor the next day, and it will be very concrete, very direct. And that's why we don't have perhaps the luxury in staying in a very ideological debate only. You need to be very practical, solve people's problems and help them to get possibilities of developing their life. And of course, this is definitely necessary in all the different competences that the regions have. But it's also important when it comes to the area you mentioned about borders and when there are problems between different countries. On the local ground, people still need to meet, still need to do business, still need to try to develop the situation. No one is gaining on that the neighbors are getting poorer, but the other way around. So we can be very practical, and we can always continue with the dialogue and speak about rather hard questions. I remember we were in the same panel 2015 discussing about migration situation as we had at that time, when it was
That's true.
as worst. And we had you from Austria, me from Sweden, we had from Turkey and from Hungary sitting in the same panel and be able to discuss about the situation, because we didn't need to say if this is good or bad, but this is the situation that we are put in to deal with, and what can we learn from each other. And I think that was really helpful, even though how problematic the question was in a whole.
Absolutely, it was helpful, and it always remains helpful if regions have a good platform to exchange experiences and views and how they handle things. And the Assembly of European Regions is a special, a wonderful, and of course a unique platform, because it includes regions not only from EU but also from other parts of Europe. Magnus Berntsson, good to have you on this podcast. Thank you for sharing your views on things. Even if I disagree with the Swedish approach to things, I really hope it will work out well for the whole world, and of course also for Sweden. Again, I wish you best of luck, good health for you and all people in Sweden, and I look forward to our next personal gathering when we can meet and maybe also shake hands again. Let's see if this will be common in the future again, at least in the Western world. Magnus Berntsson, take care. Thank you for being a guest in our podcast. Bye-bye.